Stacy Murphy here with a quick video on planning your harvest schedule. So calculating the date at which harvest will be available to you, calculating how to plant something so that it's ready before that first frost happens if you're in a cold area, and knowing when you can replant things in succession. So knowing when you can harvest something, take it out of the ground, means that you know when you can plant the next crop. All very important things to know. And there are telltale signs in the field which allow you to understand, yes, this is actually the exact perfect time to harvest this head of broccoli, let's say. But a harvest calculator will tell you approximately the right date so that you can be on the watch and you can set reminders for yourself to go out there and harvest it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you very quickly how to use a calculator to know when your crops are going to be available in the field. And then I'm going to show you a quick tool that's online. So in case you don't want to make your own calculator, that will help you put in some dates to understand. We're coming up on fall. We're coming up on those first frost days for people in the northern hemisphere. So when is the last possible date to put in the ground different crops? And it varies depending on where you are, and it's a really quick calculator that you can use, and it's all online. All right, so I've opened up Google Documents to do a couple of calculations, and you can use Excel if you're more familiar with that, or Numbers if you're on a Mac. For Google Drive, all I did is I went to my Google Drive, I clicked New, and then I clicked Google Sheets. And what opens up is something that looks just like Excel, like this. So here we're going to do a couple of very quick calculations on our crops. So let's just say that we want to time when our beans are going to be ready for harvest. Let's say we planted them in the spring. We want to time when is our kale going to be ready for harvest in the fall. And let's say when are our tomatoes going to be ready? When is our lettuce going to be ready? And then when is our broccoli? When should we get it in the ground in order for us to harvest it for the fall? So let's just take these 5 examples really quickly. So the way to calculate, the first thing you need to know is the days to maturity. And this shows up on seed packets and also on websites. And for beans, it's anywhere between 55, 60 days. Let's just call them 55 for now. Kale, you can usually start to harvest kale after about, I don't know, usually about 6 weeks. There's no real magic behind it. You just want to make sure that the kale has some leaves to photosynthesize to leave behind. Let's just say 42 you start to harvest. Tomatoes, oftentimes they're longer, but there are some that are early girls that are usually shorter days to maturity, and so let's put in 60 for that. Let's put in for lettuce 28 days. Usually if we're going to cut it as baby lettuce, it's like 28 days. And then broccoli anywhere between 55 and 70 days usually on those packets. So let's say that our packet says 60. So let's take a look at these different examples. So for the first thing that we want to know is the date we plant, right? And then we want to know when it's going to be harvest ready. So that's what we're going to calculate. Now, the cool thing about the spreadsheet is that it's going to calculate for us. So with beans, what we want to do, let's say we planted them the day that our last frost happens, wherever we are. And let's just say that was April 15th. And then for kale, let's say we did the same thing. We just want to know when is it going to be ready to harvest, and we put it in the ground early in the season. For our tomatoes, let's say the same thing. We put them in the ground April 15th, what happened with those. And then lettuce, let's say the same thing. Let's just say that April 15th date again. And then there is this broccoli, and this one we're talking about, can it be ready for fall harvest, and 60 days. So for this one, we might want to calculate backwards, and so I'm gonna wait and do something different for that one. So let's go up here for beans, and basically what we can do is we can create an equation to have the calculator or the spreadsheet calculate for us. So we say equals, that tells the calculator that we want it to calculate for us. And we want it to calculate April 15th plus 55 days. And that gives us June 9th. So now we know that our beans are going to be ready on June 9th for harvest. And you can click and you can grab, see how my cursor turns into a crosshair. and you can drag downwards, see that dotted line around the boxes? And when I release, it calculates all those dates, and basically the equation, it's dragging the equation downward so that April 15th plus 55 is June 9th, April 15th plus 42 is May 27th, April 15th plus 60 is June 14th, and so on. So that's how you can use the calculator to figure out when you're going to be ready to harvest. So that's really useful. And the next way that you can use the calculator is to try to figure out when to plant your fall crops. So what you want to do here is, let's say I want to say put in a column that says first frost date. And this is, you never know when a frost is going to happen if you're in a cold area. And usually, let's say we say November 15th. If an area has a first frost date that averages around November 15th, it might frost on October 31st. It might frost on December 15th. You never know, but you want to have a general average first frost date. Some people like to pick the absolute earliest frost date they've ever seen and use that just to make sure. I like to use average because I like to play risky. So here I have my broccoli, and I want to make sure that it heads before that frost date and that I get my harvest in. So I'm going to work backwards and to this date that we're going to plant. So what we're going to do is we're going to say equals this minus the 60 days. Now, if I were to plant it on September 16th and try to get it in before November 15th, it's probably not going to happen. And here's why. In the northern hemisphere, as the days are shortening, it's getting less sun, there's less heat. The days are literally getting shorter. So what you want to do in the fall is it's not a straight 60 days. What it actually is whatever the days to maturity. So I'm going to do what I'm going to do this November 15th minus 60 days, and then I'm actually going to say minus 14 days, which is another 2 weeks, and that's going to be September 2nd. So that is the absolute last date that I would get that broccoli in the ground to be able to harvest it before November 15th. Now, a couple notes. When these days to maturity, what they actually mean varies a little bit, so you need to know this. So let's say you are planting lettuce and you want a fall harvest before November 15th. So we're going to put in another one down here. We're going to say we want our lettuce to come in before November 15th, or let's say more likely spinach, right? Something that's cold weather. And we know that we can get some baby spinach in 28 days. So we do the same thing here. We say equals this minus this, and we hit return. Now, what you'll notice on seed packets is that the difference in these days to maturity is that for things like lettuce and spinach, oftentimes those are actual days to maturity from the time that you put seeds in the ground to the time that you are going to harvest. And you'll get little baby spinach at 28 days, you'll get baby lettuce at 28 days, and it'll be a couple inches tall. However, with something like tomatoes and broccoli, when they say 60 days to maturity, what they really mean is 60 days to maturity from when you have a seedling put in the ground. So this is where it gets tricky. So I'm going to say insert column to the left, insert column to the left. So there are some crops, and I'm going to just highlight them here in yellow. These are things, and sometimes beans too, I would say. These are things that oftentimes those days to maturity are calculated from the time when you're transplanting, not from when you're seeding. So here is the date to seed, and this is going to be the number of weeks. Oops, sorry about that pop-up. Number of weeks until seedling is ready. And I'm going to do format and text wrapping, wrap, so you can see that. Okay, so for things like beans, tomatoes, and broccoli, what you want to do is for broccoli, typically it takes between 5 and 7 weeks to get that broccoli ready for transplant. So if we were to go on the midway, so this would be, and actually we should say number of days, because everything else that we're calculating is days, right? So this is number of days, and these are actual days. So for that broccoli, if we want number of days, let's do equal to 7 days times 6 weeks is 42 days. So now we can back calculate, and we can say the date that we're going to seed this broccoli to be ready on November 15th, we're going to say equals the date we plant minus the number of days until that seedling is ready. So we would have had to put that seed in the ground on July 22nd for it to be ready to transplant on September 2nd, to be ready for full maturity on November 15th. So here's why it's important to understand what these days to maturity mean. Same thing goes for tomatoes. Tomatoes sometimes are 5 to 7 weeks. So again, we'll call it that 42. So this is equal to this minus 42. So we want to get our tomatoes into our greenhouses in March 4th. If it's cold outside, we want to get those into our greenhouses so that they're ready to be put in the ground. And you could actually put your tomatoes in even earlier, just as long as you keep increasing the size of your pot so that your tomato plant has enough root growth before you transplant it. Now beans are a little bit different. You can put the seed directly in the ground, but sometimes that days to maturity is more from transplants. Sometimes it's from seed in the ground. This is a trickier one. So a lot of the root vegetables, it's from when you put the seed in the ground, but beans are one of those things that sometimes some manufacturers do from seed and some do from transplants. So let's just say usually beans are really fast. So let's say 4 weeks that you want to grow that seedling before you put it in the ground. So that's 28 days. So here you're going to say the day that you're going to seed it is going to be this minus this. And there you go. So, so this is how you can calculate some of those numbers for yourself, and you can go through and you can do all of your crops, and you can create your crop plan this way. And then what I like to do is when I know my harvest is going to be ready, I set little calendar reminders on these dates. I little pop-ups on my calendar, and it tells me that they are ready to harvest. And it's just a little reminder, because oftentimes I'm outside anyway and I can see that it's going to be ready to harvest before it's actually ready. So it's just a little bit of help in case, especially for seeding dates. So let's say you're going to plant a lot of successions of lettuce. This is a way to plan out your dates that you're going to seed and then remind yourself for later. All right, so that's a little bit about how to use a calculator and help you plan your harvest. So if you're interested in the fast way of knowing whether or not you can plant something and it'll be ready for harvest in the fall, you can go to Johnny's website, and they have all kinds of calculators that are going to help you know when to plant your seeds. So johnnyseeds.com, and you go over to this Learn tab, and you click on the tools and calculators, and they've got all kinds of calculators to help you out. They have the seed quantity calculator, which helps you know how many seeds to order based on germination rates. And then they have the seed starting date calculator, which will help you know when to plant something for the spring in order for the right time of harvest. They have succession planting calendars or calculators if you're growing a whole bunch of greens one after another. And then they have this fall harvest planting calculator, which we're interested in. And if you click on it, you'll download it, and it'll look something like this. And what this calculator does is it helps you know whether it is each crop, whether it will come into full maturity before a certain date. And it does all the calculations for you. And basically it includes those 2 to 3 weeks of time, that buffer zone for as the days are getting shorter and there's less sun. So that's included in this calculator. So, and this uses the kind of average days to maturity for all these different crops. And so you'll want to double check their website and look at their days to maturity. Now, notice the difference between beets and broccoli. Beets, direct seed, DS, broccoli, TP. So that means that the dates that are given for beets are direct seeding those beets, and broccoli is transplanting. So what you'll notice here is this is the date that you're looking for right here. So right now it says October 1st, average first frost date for your area. And so let's say let's say it is October 1st. Well, what that means when you look down this list is that there is really only radishes that you have available at this point to plant in the ground and still get a harvest before October 1st. And you're going to want to direct seed them. And we're not talking about the daikon radish type, we're talking about the small round radish types that are basically at 28 days to maturity. So that's what you have available to you if your first frost date is October 1st. Now let's say we put it out a month and we say, all right, 10/31, now we have much longer time and we could almost direct seed our beets. We might get them in time. It might be worth putting them in the ground because we'll get baby beets and we'll still get the greens. So it might be worth putting those in the ground. If we had Chinese cabbage, we could transplant it. If we had Asian greens, we could direct seed those and get them in time. If we had lettuce heads, we could direct seed those and get those in time. And of course, still our radish will work, as well as our daikon radish at that point, and our spinach and Swiss chard. So those are all and turnip as well. So those are all dates that are before or come after today. So we could still get them in the ground. Better yet, if our first frost date was November 15th, even more would become available to us. We could transplant broccoli. If we had it available, we could still get that in the ground, which would be exciting. So this is a really quick calculator. If you don't want to build your own calculator for your fall harvest, this is a way for you to see some of the main crops and Johnny's seeds, what would be available for you to plant in order to get it in before your first frost. So there you have it, 2 tools. One tool that's online, ready to go, just plug and play. It'll tell you what crops you can get in the ground before that first frost in the fall. And also a tool that you can start to build for yourself. This is really important. Every year your space has the same first frost date and last frost date. And so you can start to create your own crop plan. And what that allows you to do is to pack in the most amount of produce between those frost dates if you know when to harvest something, when to pull it out, and when to seed the next thing. So it's very important to put together a crop plan for yourself, know when to harvest, make sure you get that food out of the ground and into the kitchen so that you eat it. That's very important. I see it's one of the biggest mistakes I see is that people don't know when to harvest, and so they forget to eat their food. So this is very important to set up a harvest calendar, which is also a crop plan. And if you have more questions about crop plans and want to see what they're useful for, you can check out my website, bkfarmyards.com/crop plan. All right, see you on the next video.